G'day jabronis, it's your boy the Verd here. I am here again for the PMC D-League, and I am doing something known as the Victory Stars and the Victory Duds. This is meant to be called the Dugo Stars and Dugo Duds. It doesn't really matter. It's basically based off this premise that Dallas Star U had back in leagues before, and basically the idea is at the end of each week I am going to be recapping what I feel were the 3 best performing Pokemon of the week, and also looking at the 3 worst performing Pokemon of the week. Basically though, what I wanted to do with this series though is look at not necessarily the worst performing teams of the week, but look more at if there are certain groups of Pokemon maybe that didn't perform at their best at a certain time. That's something else I want to highlight. But without further ado, let's get cracking with the stars, because honestly these are the ones that you want to hear about. You want to hear about the Pokemon that did a really good job for their team and helped them to a victory. So let's just kick off with the stars. So the first star that I want to discuss today is the Mandibuzz, otherwise known as the Destroyer, from Dolphin's team in his matchup against the Maxximum Charizards. this thing, now, it did dodge a Toxic, and there was a time when it probably should have died to Hitmonlee, but because those things didn't happen, it was able to take out 3 Pokemon on the Maxximum Charizards team. It was able to stall them out really well, and if Hitmonlee wasn't packing the Stone Edge, probably could have done even more work against the team. It was really well used, and just had a very good matchup. Like, Swampert could have put in work against it, but Swampert died earlier on thanks to Dusknoir. Dusknoir basically paved the way for Mandibuzz to put in work, because since the Hippo was burned, since Tentacruel was burned and weakened, there wasn't really many switch-ins to a knockoff left on the team. It just had so much momentum, so much power for him, and because Hippo it packed the Taunt as well, which meant that Hippo couldn't slack off or Toxic the Mandibuzz, but it just put in a lot of work and was the defining Pokemon of the match, and the 3rd best Pokemon I feel of the week. Anyway, let's move on. The 2nd best Pokemon this week, in my opinion, is the Conkeldurr from the Mesquite Mesprits versus Kansas City Kakunas match. Now, this is a bit of a controversial one. Okay, I'll completely understand this being controversial, because as you guys should know from watching all the battles this week, the Mesquite Mesprits actually lost to the Kansas City Kakunas. Now, the reason why I have put this pick as the 2nd best Pokemon of the week is because Conkeldurr almost single-handedly won that game for the Mesprits. Now, it is contentious saying that it should be a dud in these rankings because of its performance late in the game, where if it locked itself into Drain Punch, it would have won, but instead decided to lock itself into Mark Punch. It's definitely a contentious decision at that, but you have to understand. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold right now. I still sound pretty shit, but whatever. You have to understand, at the time, it was a tough decision, and throughout that battle, Adam did not have any switch-in or play around this choice banded Conkeldurr. The big thing was also, I think, the first play that was predicted was when Adam went into the Gorgeist and got absolutely destroyed by a Conkeldurr knockoff, like blown all the way back from that knockoff, and that basically just set the stage for Conkeldurr to rip through his team. And if Kyler made that one really good play of Drain Punching there, the game would have been his. That was really unfortunate on his part. It's a tough decision at the time. Obviously, he thought maybe the Mamoswine wouldn't want to Ice Shard, and so then by him going for the ban and Muck Punch and killing the Mamo, he'd be all good. But it was just one of those 50-50s, and honestly, it could have gone either way, and won the match or lost the match. That's why Conkeldurr was definitely one of the top 3 Pokemon this week. Coming in as the best Pokemon of the week, in my opinion, it also was in there for the top player. Now, I'm not talking about Rhyperior, I'm talking about the thing that set up this victory, and that was the Cresselia. Now, you're probably thinking, why is Cresselia up here for the top Pokemon? It didn't necessarily get any kills, didn't really do that much, but what you need to understand, what Cresselia was able to do was, it was able to force the Kyurem to waste Ice Beams. Now, why this is crucial is because RG ended up winning this battle because Kyurem ran out of Ice Beams. They had to go for Earth Power and Rhyperior, which didn't kill it, and Rhyperior proceeded to Rock Blast and win the match. Now, this wouldn't have been possible without Cresselia. Kyurem's set was Sub, Roost, Earth Power, and Ice Beam. With Cresselia on the team for the Metagross, it basically meant that Kyurem's only way of hitting the Cresselia was with Ice Beam. So by really good wear and tear on the Kyurem over time, Cresselia was really able to basically say, well, you know what, the only way you can really hurt me is by Ice Beaming. I'm going to force you to use all of them, and because Jack had used all of them, it paved the way for the Rhyperior to come away. That was really important. It was a stall fest, it really was, but Cresselia showed that when it comes to Stallfest, it is still the main mod. Yes, it is contentious that Jack probably could have wasted Earth Powers to allow Cresselia to die to the struggle, but at the time, the fact that Cresselia was able to wear down all the PP of Kyurem to allow Rhyperior the chance to win the match, that had to be the best Pokemon. It was stally, it was annoying, but that's just how Cresselia should be, and that's why it was the #1. But now we're going to talk about the duds. I'm going to be a bit brutal with these. Not really brutal in the sense of like saying I think these people were terrible at using these Pokemon, but it's just my opinion. And people like battlers and viewers, you understand this is my opinion on this stuff. Disagree with it if you want, but this is how I feel as an analyst. So, we're going to crack into the worst 3 performing Pokemon this week, and we're going to kick things off with 3rd place being the Sandslash from the Baltimore Oriolus. Now this one is very kind of personal because I actually helped CJ with this Sandslash, so I recommended it to him. Now what was really unfortunate is that the Landorus, after CJ told me, ended up getting 2 quite high rolls on its Earthquakes, which basically ended up putting Sandslash into Gamlon range, which is really unfortunate. If you don't know what a Gamlon Berry is, first of all, if your HP gets lower than I believe 25%, it basically means that it raises your defense. The other big thing about it though is that if you're above 25% and you use a move called Natural Gift, it becomes a base 100 Ice type move. Now why this was really unfortunate for CJ was because without those 2 high rolls, CJ would not have been in Gamlon range and could have fired off that Natural Gift Ice, and if that had gone off and Landorus had gone down, it might have changed the battle a little bit. Not saying Akki wasn't in control, but those 2 high rolls definitely mattered, and it was really unfortunate because CJ set was good. But why this is a bad thing in general was, I think when you look at the match, and there wasn't really much Sandslash could do. The other thing though that Sandslash could have done, was the reason why it was kind of a dud, even though I helped CJ with a set, the other thing he really could have done is, if he knew that the Landorus was an offensive Landorus, a really good play as well could have been to go for the knockoff. Now if you're going for the knockoff and got rid of Landorus's Choice Scarf, that could have been really handy throughout the battle and definitely could have swung things maybe back in CJ's favor, instead of risking the roll there on the Earthquake being able to do enough or not. So that was definitely a contentious one. Obviously, as you can see, if the 3rd place one is just picking up straws, the other 2 are very definite, but I'm sorry CJ, when looking at everybody and the players they made, Conkeldurr was up there, but I feel like this one was a bit worse, in my opinion. Coming in at number 2, we have the use of Excadrill from the Bermuda Tri-Attacks in their match against the Windsor Weaviles. Now, Excadrill is, without a doubt, one of the best Pokemon in this format, and the fact that it was paired with a Mega Charizard X is pretty crazy. That's pretty insane. So you'd be thinking though, if you have a Mega Charizard X on your team and you have a Staraptor on your team, the main thing you want to be doing is using this drill to remove rocks, right? Well, that wasn't really how it turned out in this match. The Bermuda Tri-Attacks, they didn't really use Excadrill very well at all. It was easily getting walled by Donphan. They didn't really have anything else to come in on Donphan, and basically what that meant was that they ended up sacking off Excadrill for no real reason at the time, which allowed Donphan to come back in later on and set up rocks. And these rocks took out half of Charizard's health, meaning it couldn't set up a DD against Absol, which sucked. And it also meant that Staraptor took a lot of damage after coming in, taking the rocks, and then having to go for the Brave Bird. So it just wasn't the best use of Excadrill in that matchup. I feel that he definitely could have used it a lot better than he did, and allowing 2 of his best wall breakers and sweepers to take a huge amount of damage from rocks just wasn't good in the end. So I felt like Excadrill was definitely a dud this week, not being able to spin and also just being basically sacked. And like, the last thing you want to do is have to sack an Excadrill when you have basically most of your mons remaining. So that was definitely a downer for me. And at number 1, guys, this is where I was talking about, where it's focusing more on the team in general than maybe one certain mon. We're going to be focusing on 3 Pokemon here, and this is going to be brutal. I am sorry in advance, but this is just honestly, you need to understand why I'm doing this. So, in at number 1, are 3 separate Pokemon from the Maxximum Charizards team in their battle against Dolphin, and I have completely forgotten his team name, which is so bad of me. His team name is the Volgate Zoroarks. There we go. All good. Why were these 3 Pokemon the duds? Let me break it down for you. Okay. First of all, he had been okay, so this is looking at the Maxximum Charizards strat. He had been stressed to run Rocks. He was told Rocks would be very good for him in this matchup. And you know why Rocks would be very good for him in this matchup? Because, as it turns out, I believe both Dugtrio and Greninja were both sashed, guys. Why this is important is because if they were both sashed, it basically meant that Hitmonlee, which had gotten some burden boost at this stage, would not only outspeed both of them, but would easily kill both of them. And then all that was left was the Stone Edge, the Mega Aerodactyl, and he would have swept Dolphin's team. But because he decided to never set up the solo, like, okay, I understand that there's also a Mandibuzz there that could have default way, but the other thing is he missed a Toxic. Now if that Toxic had hit and he got Rocks up, he could have stalled out that Mandibuzz 1v1 and got into a situation to get his Rocks up. And that just would have changed the entire complexion of that game. So that was the first of a few duds for me. The second one has to be the use of that Alakazam. If you're up against a guy that has a Mandibuzz, your best way to hit Mandibuzz is not to go for Focus Blast. You have moves like Dazzling Gleam, you have other ways of hitting it, you could have knocked off and all that stuff. There were so many options for Alakazam in that situation, and the first thing he chose to do was Thunder Wave the Mandibuzz. Now Mandibuzz was already slower than everything else on that team, but he still decided to Thunder Wave it. Don't really know why. Hitting it with Focus Blast might have been better at the time, as it would have forced it to roost, but Mandibuzz was eating up the Focus Blast. The better thing there for Alakazam, I feel, would have been having the Dazzling Gleam, as I believe from there, if he was Max Special Attack, it probably could have been a 2-hit KO for him, and it just would have been a smarter play in general. It's just like Thunder Wave and Mandibuzz achieved nothing, and then relying on, you know, Focus Blast against the Death Drop just wasn't smart. It wasn't his best play, and it was just felt like it was a waste of Alakazam, but didn't really do anything in the battle. And finally, probably the biggest dud of them all, looking back on this entire battle, it definitely was the biggest dud of them all. Hippo setting up Rocks was bad, but this was the worst thing. If you look back at the battle, and you really need to look back at this battle, there is a moment when Hitmonlee comes in against Mandibuzz, when Mandibuzz has about 80 HP, okay? He decides to go for a knockoff with Hitmonlee at the time. Now, because he chose to go for knockoff, just keep that in mind, he went for knockoff at that stage. Now, if you actually look back again, and you see when Hitmonlee is about to start a sweep, you will see that he goes for a Stone Edge when Mandibuzz is over 100 HP, and doesn't crit the Mandibuzz, and Mandibuzz goes down. This is because it's a specially defensive Mandibuzz, which means if he had gone for Stone Edge so much earlier on with his Hitmonlee, Mandibuzz would have died, which means he could have kept a sashed Alakazam in the back to at least be able to deal with the Greninja to an extent, even that much, or deal with the Aerodactyl. Like, he had ways to deal with those mons, but instead he decided to go for a knockoff. I don't know if he was predicting a switch. There wasn't really much else that could come in on the Hitmonlee. Like, he had done really well to that stage to kill off the Dustoir, which was basically the one thing stopping Hitmonlee from being able to go in and sweep. All he had to do was get at Rocks, and then all he had to do was get rid of this Mandibuzz, which he could have done with the Stone Edge, and decided not to do it. And I don't like, obviously I get that, you know, he's not used to this format, and that's why this feels brutal, guys, because he isn't used to the format. But the thing about it was, knockoff certainly wasn't play. If you knew you had Stone Edge, you face the Pokemon you're up against. You don't think about what could come in, what could happen. You just attack what's in front of you. There's no need this early in the season making wild predictions. And I don't know if he was predicting something else to come in there, but it was just a bad prediction. He was much better off just firing for Stone Edge, killing the Mandibuzz there, and actually giving himself a really good chance to bring that battle back. Because at that stage, I think as well, he had done that and then went into Hippo. I don't know if that was when the Jinx had died or not, but he definitely could have done it before Jinx had died, because also having a Scarf Jinx in the back would have been pretty darn clutch, because at that stage, Scarf Jinx could have also swept. So there was just so many variables where if he just made the better plays, he definitely had the match won. But you know what? That's going to do it, guys. I don't want to have to go on a rant, because I could be ranting about this shit for, like, ever. So that's basically going to do it for for the Dugo stars and the Dugo duds. Basically, it's more victory stars and victory duds, but whatever. So, recapping you guys. The stars that I felt were the best Pokemon this week were Mandibuzz, Conk, and Cress. And the worst Pokemon this week were Sandslash, Excadrill, and the combination of Alakazam, Hippowdon, Hitmonlee. If you would like to discuss these reasons more, feel free to tweet at me about it. Feel free to comment down below. I will happily reply to your comments about this, because honestly guys, I stand by these decisions, and this is my personal opinion, I'm sure, but you have to understand, in this format, a lot of these plays were easily avoidable, easily able to fix up, and I think these guys aren't going to make these plays again, but it just shows that if you mess up in a battle, I am going to come down on you with a rain of power and terror. So just don't mess up, make good plays, and I'll give you a good mention. But if you mess up, you're screwed. Pretty much. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, guys. Have a nice day. This is your boy, The Verd, for the PMC D League, and I'm out this bitch.